back, everybody. I'm your host, Bruce.
And I'm your host, Pete.
And we are The Epic Experiment.
If you're new to the show, we talk about all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on primarily playing Commander.
Our show is available on thelotuscouncil.com, your favorite podcast apps, and a variety of social media platforms.
If you want to reach out to us, check the show notes below for our contact information.
Now, on with the show.
Let's get after it.
Hey, Bruce, so it's our 175th, man. I can't believe we made it.
Dude, that's amazing. Like 175 episodes? That's like a long time. I've been doing this a while.
This is my greatest life achievement since I was in the 5th grade and won a National Geographic competition for knowing where all the states were. So.
Did you just we have to edit that now?
Yes, I did, because the 175th, we have to do something.
Okay, good. We'll take the family recording, like the family level, and report right in the drain. Okay.
So, I got this special guy with me. My buddy Chris is with us tonight. He's probably like, why was I coerced to do this? Why am I here? What are we doing?
Epic Experiment. Well, I'm starting with Chris tonight.
Chris and I, we met a few years ago. We're from the same area. We grew up together. And now he likes to host Wednesday nights when we're local. And we've got a nice local group of guys. So very happy to have him. And he shares a lot of values that we do. So we're excited to have him today.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Epic Experiment Podcast, for hosting me. Humbled to be here. I know Pete and Bruce know a lot more about this game than I do, so I'm just happy to be here and share some of what I can.
Sounds good. Now, before Chris can go on the show, we got to ask some interview questions, Pete. That's part of the requirements to be on the show. We got to
I was gonna get out my big police flashlight and be like, hey man, hey, how's it going? How you doing, sir? Yeah.
Hey, okay, I'm gonna date myself, but you're not Joey Tribbiani here, how you doing sort of line. That's all we're doing here. We're asking lots of questions, Pete. Hard questions.
So magic. Chris, how long have you gotten into the game, and give us a little bit of background about you?
So I've been playing Magic mostly off, but on and off since I guess about 2001, around the release of Odyssey, that set that came out a long time ago, and then I got out of the game for a long time with sports and college and everything else, but recently came back when my roommate was playing a whole bunch of Magic cards on the table and was super embarrassed about it, but I told him, dude, why didn't you tell me sooner? I immediately went home, got all my old cards, and found out about Commander, so I'm hooked again.
Nice. Excellent. Now, have you dabbled in any other formats, or are you strictly a Commander guy?
So originally, when I started playing, it was only 60 card. Commander didn't exist, so I did a little bit of that back in the day, and I will occasionally draft and pre-release and things like that. But generally, I stick to the Commander format. It's a little more relaxing and generally less competitive for me. But
you remember the most memorable deck you had as a kid? Do you remember any of the decks that you built? Because I had a mono white life gain deck because I figured out if they couldn't kill you, if they couldn't reduce your life to 0, you couldn't lose. So what were you playing? Remember?
I think it was a whole bunch of life bursts. I want to say gain 4 life and then additional 4 for every one in your graveyard.
Classic.
Yes, love it.
A bunch of angels, flyers, things like that. Just
Healers, Hawks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Healers Hawks wearing some auras. Yes, that's fantastic. I think everyone's built if they were just studying. I think everyone tried a life gain deck. Everyone tried the burn deck, full of suboptimal burn spells. I think everyone tries the Merfolk or their Kindred deck. I mean, I remember vividly playing Merfolk from Fallen Empires, which was like, wow, I was struggling to find anything that was any good. So I remember vividly. I think I still have it intact here. And my children laugh hysterically at it when Dad pulls out the Merfolk deck. They're like, people play cards like that, Dad. I'm like, oh, thanks, boys. Super refreshing. Thank you, children.
I remember the guild kits came out around the time I got more into the game. I bought a few of those, and I ended up ripping them apart. And I remember I told Bruce about this a few weeks ago, but I used this old Theros card called King Makar. Every time he would become tapped, and untap him, you make a gold token and exile a creature. And I played this really bad enchantment. I would untap it, and I'd use the gold to tap it and untap it. And I had no win color, but that was what I did. Yeah.
Maria is not a bad card. It's a very good card. It's just kind of a die water card with that particular mechanic.
That's what I mean. Like, I made it worse than it is.
Okay, fair.
Well, speaking of crappy cards, we're going to get into our favorite segment. Chris has a card he'd like to share with us, too, so we're excited to feature that. But first, Bruce, what do you have for us? Because you like to usually do more recent cards.
Yeah, I do. So this is one that's sort of been catching some attention as a number of competitive streamers have been streaming Modern. And this card has popped up on a number of feeds. It's this Free Strider Lookout, 200 green for a 3/3 human rogue with reach. And listen to this: whenever you commit a crime, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This ability triggers only once each turn. And this has been catching quite a bit of attention in Modern because there's so much ability to commit crimes, whether you're thought seizing or you're removing creatures or targeting their hand for with a mind rot or whatever effect, all sorts of effects. And so consequently, you're able to ramp out pretty heavily if you have a Free Strider Lookout on the battlefield, which I think is kind of remarkable that a 3-mana 3/3 is getting any amount of attention in Modern. And if Modern's looking at it, should we, as Commander players, be looking at this? So that's why I'm bringing it to the table today. Is it any darn good, or is it a piece of garbage?
So, Chris, do you want me to start?
After you, Pete.
All right, so this reminds me, Bruce, of that Silverback Elder, the 5-mana ape. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you look at the top, I think it's 4 or 5, and you get to put a land tapped in, and the rest go on the bottom. Any of their ability is you either gain 4 life or blow up an artifact or an enchantment. I think this is really good in Modern because of the fact that you really have a limited amount of turns. And I feel like in this particular situation, I think it's a tiny bit underwhelming in green as a color. I think this should have been in a different color and had a different effect. Like maybe red, it would ping the opponent or something. But I guess I just feel like it's a little bit short. I feel like how many times will you realistically commit crimes in green when a lot of the removal we're playing and if we're paired with another color is not going to be green normally? Like how many fight spells do you realistically play? Like 3 or 4 maybe out of all the decks?
Not a lot.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's still decent as on curve. But what do you think, Chris?
I think if you have a reoccurring way to commit crimes, something that taps to exile something from an opponent's graveyard or something like that, to pair with this, I think it would be great to ramp out. But other than that, I agree that with what Pete's saying along the lines of there are better effects cheaper in that color.
Yeah, but I'm kind of agreeing with you. I like the idea of the repeatable crime, like an unlicensed hearse or something that you can use repeatedly to go and make this thing pop off and ramp you hard. I don't like the idea of casting spells into it because yes, you have to pair it with a second color because chances are the green fight spells or whatever you're casting as interaction as a crime is likely at sorcery speed. But if you're in white, you might be able to get your Path to Exile or Swords to Plowshare or whatever But if you're like scavenging ooze, just eat something and you're just going to get a crime and get a land. And then, or an unlicensed hearse, or, something to that effect. I think there's like a lot of room to be doing, or if you're having like some sort of a ping effect where you tap a creature that pings, you could do that. So if you wanted to get into like Teamer or like a prodigal sorcerer or young pyromancer, like that sort of stuff, you can get a lot of value out of doing that sort of thing and ramping your deck out quite significantly, because the line on it where you can only once each turn in a 4-person turn cycle, if you could do it 4 times, you are probably laughing because you're going to pile up a pile of land.
I was thinking Demolition Field and Field of Ruin type effects would be nuts.
Oh, yeah.
So, really strong land like their Tomb of Yawgmoth, their, even a Karoo land. We talked about those last week, but you blow it up and everybody searches for a land, you search and they search, but then you get to search first. You layer the trigger, so you get to not only blow up a land, but you get 2 lands for the price of 2.
To be honest, I think this is probably pretty good, and we're just sleeping on it. Like, if the guys in Modern are finding it and finding it to be use, like, could a casual Commander player put this to use? Probably. And so I think it's probably low-key good, and we probably should be looking at it quite seriously for green decks of all sorts of flavors. So I think I'm going to go dig it out of some bulky box and slide it in a deck.
Last thing I have for this is, if you're playing like Simic, which Simic doesn't need the help, but if you're like countering someone's spells, you get to do this as well. So
That's true.
The last final thought that I have is like, this is a really sneaky way to just kind of continuously get a ton of value every single turn. And it's any land, it's not basics. So
yes, that's why it's so good for us, because we play a lot of non-basics. I'm thinking Slogurk lands.
Slugger, he has a Slugger that's kind of cool. And it just kind of goes crazy after a while. It's like a George deck, So, or I find George builds decks that kind of snowball very fast. But
all right. So free rider. What is this guy? I don't even know what this guy is. Free Strider Lookout looks like it could be a sleeper hit for us. All right, what else we got here tonight?
So this next card will put you to sleep. Actually, it's called Psychic Battle. It's from Invasion. It's literally like $1, 3 colorless and 2 blue. I'm gonna read this wall of text for you. Okay, Bruce?
Yeah.
Yes. One second.
Yeah.
Whenever a player chooses one or more targets, each player reveals the top card of their library. The player who reveals the card with the highest mana value may change the target or targets. If 2 or more cards are tied for the highest, the targeted targets remain unchanged. Changing targets this way doesn't trigger abilities of permanents named Psychic Battle. So, what do you think? Chris, would you like to go first?
Sure. I think this card seems to be a good way to deal with somebody if they're obviously the problem, where everybody wants to target that person. But other than that, I feel like this could, essentially go to the highest bidder here, change the whole course of the game, ensue a little chaos in a color, blue that's not typically known for that.
Chris, what do you think?
This is awful, dude. No one's going to appreciate you playing this card. All right, this is in the same vein as Possibility Storm, where you cast your spell, you don't know what's going to happen, and it's going to take one bozo with a sensitive divining top or a scroll rack or something to manipulate the top of their deck, and now this is going to literally take forever to resolve anything. This is like. It may be effective, but you're being disrespectful to everyone's time tonight when you play this card. So no, this is not it, folks. Do not do this. Your friends are going to be very upset with you. This is trash.
It could realistically be political, I guess, with the card potentially, but how funny would it be if you played this in a deck where you always are guaranteed the lowest, so you can upset the other players because the other player is able to change the target might upset the other person that they want to target. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, don't do this. Don't do this. Pete,
everybody.
you don't do this.
I'm not gonna play it. I'm not gonna do it. Okay, I won't. I won't. Just for the sake of our health of our group here.
Your friends are going. Like, you can put it in the deck next week. I'm like, ask the play group. Hey, can I make? I want to try this card. Can I put in my opening 7 and see what will happen? And then like, you'll resolve it, and your friends are like, I hate you. I hate you so bad, Pete. I'm gonna kill you.
I'd let him do it.
All right, we're just gonna like put a sprinkle of salt, and then we're gonna get the whole back to the bag of salt and just pour it all over the table. Like everybody's salty now.
I mean, I feel like we could play a game where whoever gets salty first, they lose first, and we could just do it that way. Who survives? Yeah.
So
salt test.
So variant on this. So Pete, put a 20-sided dice in the middle of the table, and every time somebody acts salty, the dice ticks up, and when you get to 20, they lose. Whoever hits the number 20 is done. So
after turn 5, yeah. So would so would I probably. Chris would probably win. I'll be honest with you. Chris, not anything Chris.
So I've played that way where people make mistakes and gameplay errors and have like takesy backsies and stuff like that. Where if there's rule errors or other mistakes made, that every time the dice ticks up. So if there's 20 mistakes made in the game, which let's be real, some people don't read their cards. Sometimes reading the card doesn't always explain the card, and so like the mistakes tick up pretty quick. And you can find somebody like, we're at 18. How do we have 18 mistakes already? Someone's gonna die. And sure enough, someone's gonna. Sometimes it's me. I've died. So
the last card, Chris. This is your MVP. You told me.
Yeah, I really like this card. I think it's an underplayed one. It's a little bit of a pet card. The first borderless kind of one I pulled after I came back to the game. It's a new Capenna release. An artifact called the Agent's Toolkit. Costs 1 green, 1 blue, and 1 generic. Agent's Toolkit enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter, a flying counter, a death touch counter, and a shield counter on it. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may move a counter from Agent's Toolkit onto that creature. For 2 mana, you can sacrifice Agent's Toolkit and draw a card.
Alright, let's go age before beauty here. So I'll go first.
Okay, sure. Okay, baby Pete, let's go.
So I've literally been wrecked by this so many times. Every time Chris has resolved this card, it's done some work. Low key, in a color combination that has a lot of ways to be evasive, even putting Death Touch on like a 3/3 flyer is awkward for people to block.
Mm-hmm.
Putting a +1/+1 counter on a big beefy creature with trample and getting it an extra point of damage in adds up very quickly in a game, especially if you're the aggressor. And then I mean, there's no secret. Shield counters are very, very solid. So putting that on the card that you really, really want to keep alive, whether it be your commander or a combo piece creature, whatever. There's a lot of utility. Obviously, Wizards has leaned into this strategy the last few years, but I think this is very flexible. You could build it with many different strategies in mind, not just counters themselves. What do you think, Bruce?
I agree. I think this. I don't think I've ever actually seen this card, so I like this. I like this card. This is something cool. The fact that it's not just whenever you cast a creature; it's whenever a creature enters the battlefield. So you could a token entering the battlefield, or something coming in out of exile, off of like a removal of an O-ring effect. You can now choose to put, and you can choose to use these effects to put a counter on it. The one that was coming to mind was like when you have modified creatures, that now this literally dumps a whole bunch of things, making them modified creatures. Kodama of the West Tree just goes nuts with this. You could ramp out crazy with this. I think this is an excellent sort of quiet card. It's sort of exactly the card that you resolve, and no one's going to mess with because they're going to go, well, what's that going to do? And then in no time flat, they go, wait a second, you got 4 things that all got 4 good abilities. And then when you're done with the card, you can sack it to replace it, which is, I think, excellent value. And then if you can find a way to recur it, like, geez, we're off to the races. So I like this card. It's exactly the sort of thing that you want to do. Helps build your board presence, helps keep you low key, does a lot of good work for you, synergizes well with lots of different things. I think this is an excellent card, and I think I've never seen it before, and I'm thinking I should probably find this card and put it in a deck.
36 cents, Bruce.
Well, in Canada, that's like $1 million, so like it's going to be like, I'm going to spend all my Horton's money for the week to pick this one up, I'm sure.
But what really breaks this card for me is any form of proliferation. If you can proliferate those counters, this card goes nuts. I built a card basically around Atraxa and this, or a deck around Atraxa and this card. I didn't think Atraxa was as punishing as it is, no matter how you build it. I wanted to build it strange counters, keyword counters, field counters.
Oh my god. So this is an inexorable tide. I'm now or contingent engine or I'm okay. Yes, I'm in. I'm like I wasn't in before.
Here, we got some of the top commanders for this card, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna name the ones that aren't very dominant. So like Perry, the Pulverizer is very obvious because it cares about that stuff. Falco, Spara. But people are running it with Me the Immortal, which is that human rogue Time Lord creature thing. Where you put counters and different kinds of counters on things. Volrath the Shapestealer, that's cool because you can put it on a creature and copy it with that creature because it has a counter on it. It's kind of cute. And there's not a ton of commanders with it yet.
Well, I'm looking here like Azuri Stalker of Spheres sounds like fun to me. Attraction Praetor's Voice, sure, I'm in. It must be in that the Perry the Pulverizer deck. If it appears with Perry and Cross Defense Contractors, so which is funny because I actually own that deck and I've never actually seen this card. So I'm either blind or obtuse or both. So anyway, I think this is excellent. I'm in. So yeah, that's a good card.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to think if there's anything it's interesting because a lot of these, obviously these commanders are caring about some sort of counters, but I'm surprised there's no cards that say if you're flickering this thing to get more value after you are exhausted.
Ooh, yeah.
So I didn't really
language there.
Yeah, I didn't really see any of that, but it makes sense because ideally, you're going to sack it after anyway.
Eventually, after I get maximum value by vomiting a bunch of silly creatures into play. Let's be real. You put your Avengers End card, make a whole bunch of plant tokens, and sprue the counters all over the place, and all cool and good with me.
So, turn 3, Agents Toolkit, turn 4, Elvish Piper, turn 5, pay green, pull out an Eldrazi, put a counter on it, have fun.
Seems good too. That seems good. Seems a little degenerate, but I'm in. I'm there. I'm with you.
Because Eldrazi's all the rage right now. Yeah.
Well, we talked about this last week and how I object to some of the biggest and baddest ones because they all have Annihilator, and Annihilator should be killed with fire. So, but Bane of Balagad's still a big old thing, and they'll have Annihilator on it, but it sucks to play against. So you can do it there.
Yeah.
Or an old mog.
That's all. What are you gonna do?
Hopefully lose to me, baby.
The funny thing is, some of these cards that we featured, it's it's coming. It still comes. It still happens. Every time you resolve the toolkit, Chris, he just resolved the toolkit. And I have to ask him again, what does this do again? It's just so much going on with it. And then we just died to it, and then we laughed. So, yeah. But we wanted to have Chris on because we recently, Bruce and I found this really nice article for Mark Rosewater's dad. He honored his father on May 6th this year. His father passed away, unfortunately, but as things are, life goes on. And he wrote this really beautiful, reflective piece about his time as a designer and why his dad inspired him. So we wanted to bring on Chris because he has a very, very chill way about him. And also just because I love to hear people's stories about the game. And I mean, you've had some hardships in your life that many people, I don't think, have dealt with, highs and lows. So, yeah, hey, yeah, I got you. But I just figured, what's one thing that's inspired you the last few years, I guess? I mean, first of all, there's one really good story you told me a while ago.
Sure.
And then maybe something more recent.
Yeah.
And then we'll just go around, I feel like, just a little bit of, reflection. I think that'd be nice to start.
Sure. So the first thing I'd like to reflect on in the Magic community in general is kindness. When I first got into the game, I didn't go to a comic shop seeking out Magic cards. I actually went there to play the Harry Potter trading card game. It was one that had come out in the slew of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon and everything else, and somebody had jumped on that IP, and I was all in. So I went to play, and somebody from the shop pulled out a starter deck. He'd never played the game before in his life, but he sat there and he played with me and my friend. And before you know it, he said, guys, if you like this game, I've got a much better game. It's been around 10 plus years already. It's not going anywhere. He said, we could try and play some Magic the Gathering. We're like, sure, why not? Before we left the shop, him and the shop owner had us with a 7th edition starter kit, a couple booster packs. We went home and built decks and started coming back to the shop every Thursday night. But and even after I built that degenerate mono white game life deck, those guys were still super nice to me and willing to play every Thursday night when I was a kid. And that really, is something that I try and put out into the universe when I play Magic, is just kindness.
And wasn't it, they didn't even charge you. They just gave you.
Nope, they just gave it to us. It was
amazing.
Yeah.
You never see that anymore, right? I feel like I've had bad experiences with LGSs in general in the last few years because of how popular the game has been. An unfortunate drawback is they really are pushing to resell, right? If you're going to go trade cards in, they're really pushing to resell them at the undercut range, which is not their fault. They have to do that because of the sort of economy we've driven. So I have no fault for the LGS for doing that. But I definitely seen, it happens at every TCG. I mean, Pokemon's infamous for it, where, they'll go to conventions and scam 12-year-old kids out of expensive cards. So that happens. Luckily, I've never had that experience in Magic overall. I definitely bartered, I'll just say that nicely, bartered with shop owners about prices. But at the end of the day, if I like their business, I'm going to support the business. Right?
It's true.
So that was great. Bruce, what about you? I know you've had a very, very great and beautiful journey, even the last few years with Discord. So, what would you like to?
Well, yeah, I mean, my experience has been very different in the sense that I really haven't grown up with an LGS. When I was a kid playing, we played in my friend's den. We'd go over to his house on Saturday afternoon, and we'd play Magic in the afternoon. And we didn't get a chance to go and buy a lot of cards because there wasn't a store nearby, and the number of places that would sell it were pretty low. This is circa 1995, so we were kids puffing it over to the shopping center on our bicycle, which you could only do for 4 months of the year here because of the snow so much. But yeah, well, hold on. We walked uphill in the snow both ways, buddy, in our paper bag shoes. It was great. So, back in my day, and then we
have shoes. What are you talking about? You didn't have shoes.
Then we yelled at the kids to get off our lawn. It was totally fine, right? This is what we did. We shake our fists and yell at the kids to get off our lawn. But no, so we had to. We ended up having to play, and make our own meta, I guess, and we would sit and trade cards and make swaps and whatever else. It was great fun then. But then when I got back into the game in 2010, 12, suddenly there were game stores that had popped up around town, but I was living outside of Ottawa. I was living in one of the rural communities, and for me to go into the store meant I had to spend a significant amount of time traveling to and from. So I wouldn't go very frequently. And I tried a bunch of shops for pre-releases, which was pretty much the best time for me to go to the store, and sort of decided I didn't like some of them because I didn't like the vibe. But I mean, I've settled on a few that I like to shop with, and the service is good. The people are friendly, and seem to be don't have any problems with a grumpy old man like myself coming in, which is now something I'm confronting, right? Because essentially, Magic is a game for for younger players, particularly at a competitive level. Like if you're between the ages of like 16 and 25, competitive one-on-one Magic is likely where you're kind of aiming at. But for someone like me, going into a game store is a little bit of an experience that's a little bit, I don't know, it's just intimidating, I guess, because again, like a lot of the players are younger, a lot of the players are maybe definitely view the game differently than I do. I mean, I've encountered that, in just playing with Pete and some of the other guys that are in other discords that are a little bit younger than I am. And so, venturing into a store is a little bit of an unknown and a bit intimidating. So, when I do find a store that's welcoming and comforting and sort of the way you're describing there, where, the store owner was supportive of you, like, it's nice to have store spaces that are going to be supportive of all players, including guys who are older, guys who are younger, men, women, people of all, varieties. Like there's, Magic is a great game, and that's one of the great pieces of it. You can play against anybody, and that's part of the appeal. So, my adventure has been very different, and I've been fortunate that online I've cultivated some online companions and some friends to play with. That this is probably harder as well because you got to put yourself out there online, where the online world's a little scary, but. I've had a bit of a weird adventure that way because I don't go to a store every week. I don't have a weekly play group. I have to play sometimes with my friends when it lines up with their family obligations as well too.
Sure. I mean, and it's interesting. Like with Mark's article, he was talking about how he came into designing cards for the game. How his father encouraged him to get out there, and I never grew up playing card games at all until college when I had a good friend introduce me to the game. And then I kind of at first was distasteful because the competitive side comes out. And then eventually I met like I had played at LGS, played Commander for a while, didn't like the scene there. I just stopped playing for a bit. And then I met Chris randomly, and then we just connected a bunch of people that we kind of had known through the area, and it created this network of guys. And then when I left to live in Washington D.C., we continued to get together. It was great. A guy made a Discord, and then we had texts going back and forth for the last 6 to 8 months, if not a year. Last 2 years, it's been going on. Various places, various people hosting. It's not just Chris hosting all the time.
Not at all. Multiple.
So there's like 3 or 4 dudes who will host, and then the beauty of that is like you said, the whole trading thing that's kind of been lost for a while. There are just guys like when we get together, there's like a guy. I have a card for you. Yeah, what are you talking about? I just have this card here. Take it. It's for this deck.
It goes good in one of your decks.
Yeah,
it's for you.
Yeah, so
all the time.
So it's nice to see that because not only do we get that experience of playing with all kinds of different people. I mean, our group is very diverse in their preferences and everything, age and as well as the other more nuanced things, sexuality, whatever it is. We also have that sort of bond where we're just like there's a guy that just got into the game from Yu-Gi-Oh, and he's had some economic hardships, so we're just like, just take whatever you need. A lot of guys in our group will just bring their extra spares or extra cards and just be like, hey, just take it. Like, we don't want anything for it. We've been in the game long enough. if it just sits in my box, I'm not using it, it doesn't make sense for me.
Agreed.
You
Yeah.
know, for the most part, unless I want to build something with it, or it's like an elf or something, so it might have some value. But the long and the short of it is, I think that's what Mark was stressing in this article overall. Is like, and it'll be linked in the show notes too. But we have a few takeaways. I mean, from that particular thing.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway from Mark Rosewater's article was that it's not necessarily always the product that makes the game special. It's the people that you play it with. He talked about a local board game group of his that had fun every week, no matter what game they played. And when he moved to a different town, the board game that the group tried, the group didn't like it. They thought it was a bad game. And he said, but that's weird because we loved it back in the old place. And really, that's what you guys stress that all the time. I know, Bruce, you say it, the big thing is getting invited back to play. I want to be somebody that's fun to play with because that makes the experience fun, whether I win or lose. As long as I had a good time with Pete and Bruce and whoever else we sit down with, you know, I'm nothing but smiles over here.
And that just reminds me, Chris, I mean, how did you come about your mindset? Because a lot of people struggle with that as a competitive thing, but you definitely had some competition in your life.
Yeah, so I guess what Pete's talking about is I played football in high school and actually won the Pete and I's alma mater a state championship in football. And you know, you got to take the good and the bad. There's good days and bad days, especially in a format where we have 100 different cards. You know, you're not going to draw into that same line as frequently as you would when you have 4 copies of a card in a 60 card deck. So you got to take the good and the bad. There's going to be days where you end up with no mana. There's going to be days where you're the biggest threat at the table and everybody's pointing their weaponry at you, you know, and you got to take it as it goes because it's no fun if you get upset or too happy on the other end. If you crush everybody and rub it in their faces, that's not going to be fun either.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this on the show before. We've talked about winning with grace and losing with grace. And, like, I think there's a lot of value. As much as people tend to say, like, oh, jocks don't play Magic cards. Like, well, obviously there's enough guys who do, whether you're a football player, hockey player, whatever. I mean, lots of guys who come from competitive sporting backgrounds who take up Magic. And I think one thing competitive sport does teach people is how to accept losing and how to win. Like, I mean, the hockey world like gets bent on its ear when people hot dog and act silly on the ice and showboat with the way they play the game, and so you learn very quickly. It's ingrained in you. Like, I remember the coach telling me I scored a goal and I celebrated a big fist pump, and I got to the bench and I got a lecture and I'm like, I think you scored before, boy, and I'm like, oh,
I'll do one better.
Like,
we were getting blown out in a game in Bowling Green University. I was playing it in college, right? So I scored on a breakaway just so they wouldn't have a shutout. And we did the famous Sally where you put the stick between your legs and ride the horse.
Horse ride, yeah.
Right in front of their bench, and they threw sticks at me. And then the coach grabbed me by the face mask and he goes, "Don't ever do that again."
Yes.
Because it wasn't even like we were losing. We knew we lost the game, right? The game was over. But it's those comments, it's those, you know, those little jabs that really tilt it out of control. And we've definitely been there, right? All three of us in Magic. We're playing people who get super aggressive when they lose, or they start cursing a lot. Or even like arguments happen because people misunderstand things or misunderstand how a card works, or someone just arguing somebody because they can, despite. And that's the awkward thing. It's like you gotta act like you've been there before, right? And it's something that ingrained in the three of us, but also a lot of, I think, guys who find that they have skill in this game. And we talked about this. They think they're the smartest man in the room, right? I'm sure we've all felt that.
That tends to be a side effect of Magic. There's a lot of people who seem to think that whatever they're doing is the most clever thing going, and
because we do all these insane things all the time when we bring the decks out and crack the whip with it.
A lot of broken things happen in Commander. That's true.
Sure do.
Yeah.
Sure do, Pete.
I mean, if I explain my thought process to you, you'd be like, wow, this guy is really dumb. Yeah, he could have done that 2 turns ago, you know? Figured it out now, you know? No,
Yeah,
but,
I do think there's a lot to be said for like the experience of Magic being what allows it to come back. And I think the game, the part of the article where he does talk about the big board gaming experience, I think Magic is unique in the sense that it gives a really robust canvas upon which to play. And we take that for granted because as players, we're so spoiled by having this really like good game to play. And it's, it's lasted 30 years. Most board games, like card games, don't last that long. And if they do, they're like Monopoly. They're frozen in time and they don't really evolve or change, or like there's not a whole lot of new innovative tech, like strategy and tech to playing Monopoly. I mean, it's just my recollection of Monopoly is that like it's the same game that was played in the 30s. Like the version we have at the cottage is the same version that's you can buy on a store shelf today. Monopoly? You don't play Monopoly anymore? Oh, okay.
I self-banned it because it was so miserable against my one cousin.
Well, because he cheated, I'm sure. Let's be real, it's Monopoly.
Yeah, sure, but it's fine. I mean, you live and you learn. Failure's a great teacher. Mark said it in his article himself.
Yeah. But anyway, Magic is this great, robust game. But even and we can that's why we can enjoy big conventions and lots of people gathering to play. But it's still at its core that you can play Magic against a bunch of jerks and it's still not fun. Even if you have a great game, it's still not fun to play with jerks. It's far more enjoyable to sit down to players who, for whatever reason, you get along well. Whether you have a similar outlook on life, you have a similar way of wanting to enjoy the game, sometimes just the same stage of life makes a big difference. Like, if I sit down with an 18-year-old kid, like a camp, when I sit down with my counselors, they're 18, 19, 20 years old, that's a real culture shock because they want to do things way different than what I want to do. And I'm like, well, settle down there, junior. Like, that's not how it goes right now. But they want to go, they play very differently. And it's like, that's sometimes being a little bit older makes a big difference in how you want to play the game. So, anyway. But the people still matter a great deal. If I was playing with jerks, I'm not sure if I'd still play the game.
Yeah, no, definitely. What I took away as well is the way that Mark wants Maro, is that the nickname for Mark? But
Mark Rosewater, yes.
But he wanted to do something that's unexpected that people don't really see coming, right? Especially with card design, and then translate to us because I love doing weird things and people are looking at me and this just happened. I can't believe this isn't happening. Remember that Comedy Central comedians would tell crazy stories, but I love that we can have crazy stories about this game too, right? Bruce played his Slogert deck for the first time against me, Chris, and he had no idea how the deck was supposed to win, and he kind of just drew his whole deck. He didn't know what happened. And I remember I killed myself with a fire covenant once. I paid too much life into it and died on turn 5 or 6. There was this one game with Chris recently where it was with the demon tribal deck.
Yeah.
And it was you got a Liliana's contract.
Yes, and everybody was scrambling to below the demon, so I didn't win.
But everybody was oh my god, we gotta figure this out. Let's sort this out. And then there was another time where Chris was playing a horror tribal deck, and he one-shotted me for 55 damage because I didn't kill his creature. But I was really far ahead in the game.
And our other buddy Rogue's Passage did it for me.
Your roommate did that.
Yeah, he did.
Your ex-roommate who lives across the street now gave you an assist.
I was I had a recent game where I had cast Approach the Second Sun once, and it was shuffled into my deck 7th at the top. And I was digging for it to try and get to it to recast it, and my opponent gaunted it off the top of the deck and stole it. And I'm my approach is gone. He's like, I'm never casting that spell. So I now had to try and win the old-fashioned way, and I didn't quite get there. But it was epic play on my opponent's part to Gaunty and steal my my approach.
That's literally one of the only ways to deal with that card. right? Beyond,
Yes, because you have to force me to like mill it or discard it or something. Because if I can it just has a virtue of trying to cast it wins the game. So yeah, that's but yeah, like no, like the great stories and I think taking risks is part of it too. Like with your deck construction, I think people like really fall into the trap as they get entrenched in playing Commander, where they are playing, the staples or like, oh, everybody plays that card or this card or that card, and I think it sort of results in a situation where the game is a little less. I mean, it's still cool, but it's less interesting than it could be because people are, playing weird or unique cards. I mean, there's only so many psychic battles you want to play before people like decide they're gonna want to like walk away from the table. But there's lots of great cards. Like there's 30,000 cards in the game. Like you can find new cards that you want to play every day, and you're like, wait, I just heard about this new card. Why have I not heard about this? This is cool. So that's part of what makes Magic fun and great when you have to stop and read the card. Like, wait a second, what does that do? I didn't know that was a thing. So I think that's part of what makes Magic and decks cool and fun.
you got anything else you want to discuss? I mean, overall, I would recommend reading this if you're having a bad day or listen to the podcast episode.
One last thing I'd like to speak to from Frank's article, and is speaking to it. I if his father passed away on April 17th, and today is only May 17th, it's been a month, and he wrote this reflection about his father. I can't imagine how Mark felt as he was writing this. Like, how many tears did the man shed as he was writing this about his father? Because it's a truly touching testament to his father and what his father meant to his trajectory and pathway to find him as an adult today making a child's card game. Like it's remarkable. And part of what I think really hit me, and I'm a father, is the fact that his father let him be his own person. Where his father was invested in playing sports as a young man, but his father let him be him and was involved in creative writing and wanting to be someone who wanted to write scripts and stories and be an author. How frequently maybe you have friends? I have friends who their child turns 5 and they sign the boy up for hockey right away. Their daughter's turns 4 and she's automatically in dance lessons. I mean, like it's stuff that because we as kids experienced it, that now our children have to relive our same experience, but instead of letting them find their own and craft their own pathway. And I think there's going to be people who could take exception to this, other than the fact that I'm looking at this very much as boys and girls and whatever else. But like, just generally speaking, like letting children grow and experience what they want to experience. And I mean, I'll give the example of my own children. I mean, I grew up invested in competitive hockey, and I've talked about that a little bit on the show. People may be familiar that I officiated professional hockey for a little while. I was deeply entrenched in it, and today I'm not. And my children, they have shown interest in doing other activities, and I'm like, great. And the same thing with their exploration of Magic. My two boys are interested in what Dad's doing. What is Dad doing? What are all these cards lying around? And they're playing the game of their own and exploring it on their own right. And I'm trying hard not to shape their playing experience too much and let them explore the game. And so I talked about my children doing some things of building decks of their own. Some of them are inherently very mean and wouldn't be great table mates in a game of Commander, but that's part of that process of learning how to play the game, is experiencing what it's like to do the bad thing to somebody else and have someone else do the bad thing to you, and coping with that. So I think that was a really telling and touching part of the story that I think Mark told, that resonated with me as a father, and having children of my own that are growing up and experiencing the world through their eyes instead of forcing them to live some of my shared experience that I had when I was a kid growing up.
Yeah, my dad, he's coached high-level soccer for a very long time. I think he was hit 10 or 15 years with the local D1 school here. And when I told him I wanted to quit soccer for good, and like I was like 12 or 13, he said, "Yeah, go for it. You want to play hockey, do it." And then when I decided to walk away from that sport because, I knew that I wasn't going into the show and wanted to get my degree. And then when I decided to do this, and they found that I was doing this podcast, they'd even ask me, like, "Are you recording tonight?" Right? They would ask because they actually were like, "This is neat. Like, this is something that we haven't really experienced." Although they won't really understand the game, but they're not like, almost criminalizing it. I mean, not a lot of people know I do this, Bruce, like in my day-to-day life. Like a lot of the people that I care about have no idea that I do this stuff. So it's incredible that this community has brought the best out of me too, I think, personally. And then, I mean, Chris, what do you have to say? Anything?
Not really, no.
No.
But I mean, I'm not a father, so I can't speak to those experiences, but I think it's great when, parents do allow their children to find their own way along things and being supportive of whatever they choose, whether it's magic, hockey, football, any of the above, as long as you're supporting your kid. And if you can bond over it and sit down and learn that game of magic with them, it's going to be all that more special.
Yeah, I just got a quick story. Last summer, I was fortunate enough. I took my two boys to Toronto to go watch a Toronto Blue Jays game, and we took the train. And so we had a long train ride to get to Toronto to go. And while we're on the train, we sat and played Magic with some of the cards from the Lord of the Rings set. And they weren't great decks. They were just, piles of commons and uncommons that we had. And it was some of the most fun I've had in ages. And my kids and I got to really enjoy traveling with each other. And just enjoy sitting on a train ride and playing cards for 3 hours, 4 hours while we traveled. And it was fun. It was super fun. And, some of my fondest memories of my summer last year that I were sitting on a train with my two boys playing Magic.
Hopefully, I mean, we're far from that. I don't think we're having children anytime soon. Hopefully,
No, I'm not going to go and say Russia wouldn't have kids. Like, going on, there's lots of not sleeping and lots of other things that go on. But
it's nice because I mean, we were lucky. Both our sets of parents, support us.
We're supportive. Yep.
Even without listening. So
and Mark, we saw, and you can hear like the emotion came through in Mark's writing that obviously his father's interest in letting him pursue his interest was a key component in helping Mark to be the success he is today.
Yep. Yeah, true. So I guess that's it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you all next week. And Chris, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be part of the Epic Experiment Podcast.
Happy to have you on any time. Of course, audience, if you like what you hear, you can find us on thelowestcouncil.com. But you can also find all our social media contacts in the show notes. And a big thank you to Nick Douglas for helping us create our intro and outro music. It's been a pleasure working with him. And so check out his other work and whatever you can find. You can find him on Spotify as well. All right? I think that's it tonight there, Pete.
This was a nice reflective piece, I'd say. For hopefully we get to another 175 and
that's a long time, but I hope so too. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Have a good night. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.